the NHS have paid out close to 3 billion. 41% of those were for maternity.
You're now having conversations in Parliament.
I know what I would like actioned when it comes to change in the maternity space. There's many people out there that have been through this.
You're involved in something huge here, right at the front of it.
Guys, I just wanted to let you know that in today's conversation, I am going to be touching on birth trauma and some quite harrowing statistics around childbirth. So if you're someone that thinks that they might be sensitive to these issues, then I'd recommend skipping this episode and maybe trying one of our other ones. Hi guys, welcome to He Said, She Said, the podcast that I do with my partner Ryan. Hey, howdy.
Hello.
We talk about honest stuff that's happened to us, the unusual bits, the nuts bits of our lives that we don't talk about anywhere else, really. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Often they're relatable, and we want to encourage you guys at home to have tricky conversations, which is why we talk about the hard stuff publicly on this forum. So should we get into it?
Let's go.
This one's going to be a little bit different, I think.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be an education for me.
Have you got a she said?
I do, actually, yeah.
You do?
You came back yesterday. And you said, I was in the House of Commons today. And I looked at you and I was like, were you? Turns out you weren't. Where were you?
Yes, that's a very good question. I think I went to somewhere called Portcullis House. I ended up in Parliament. I was in room 13.
Which is not the House of Commons.
Which is not the House of Commons. So after I had this very important meeting, which I'll tell you guys all about in a little bit, we had a bit of a tour of Parliament, which was really nice. And we went into a room.
Who's we?
So I went with Sam.
Right.
I went into this room and it looked very impressive. It had all of those benches that go sideways.
Was it like green leather and rich mahogany?
Green leather, a lot of rich mahogany, a lot of gold buttons. And I said to the lady I was with, it looks a lot smaller than when I see it live on TV. And then I thought, wait a second, like, have I ever even seen anything live on TV from Parliament? But it was actually a different room. It was a room
where they room where they wave their papers and
I thought it was the main room, the main event. It was the room where they have their votes of no confidence. So when things go really awfully in the party, they all congregate. So whether it's the Conservatives or the Labours, whoever's in charge at the time, they go in and they go, this is going terribly. And they have that discussion.
What were you doing there? I have no idea why you were there.
So it was quite last minute, but I was invited with Bauer, who own Hits Radio, who Sam works with.
Okay.
Who I did a feature with around birth trauma.
Right.
When my book came out last year.
Yeah.
And it was a very powerful feature. I spoke with a lady called Kim Thomas, who's the chair of the Birth Trauma Association, a charity that I'm connected with.
On the radio.
On the radio.
Yeah.
Anyway, they wanted to kind of create a continuation of that. So they opened up this opportunity for me to go to Parliament to actually sit in on to chair an APPG meeting.
Chair?
Not chair, to have a discussion.
Please be seated.
So
we can begin.
Basically, I went in with Sam to meet a guy called Mick, who's one of the news presenters at Bauer. And I met with a lady called Rosie Duffield, who is the chair of the APPG, which is the all-party parliamentary committee. And because it's all-party, it means that it's not biased.
And did you actually speak?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What, stand up in front of people?
No, so it was... So we went underground, and we ended up. It felt very cool.
Secret tunnels.
We went into secret tunnels.
Whoa.
Yeah, we went through secret tunnels, and we ended up in one of the rooms. And it was actually Sam's first time being in Parliament, so he was very excited because he obviously thought it resembled Harry Potter, and it was really nice to have him as a wingman.
That's cool.
And then we sat down in a room full of people, 20-odd people,
all women. No,
a combination, a mixed bag. And discussed, I suppose, largely like my story so that they could get as much insight as possible. It was really like a sounding board. It was let's go through Louise's story and give this person an opportunity to speak up about what she's been through because she's already spoken publicly about it. And given that myself and Sam have public profiles, they wanted to learn a bit more about what we do to highlight important issues, but also they wanted to connect what I've been through and what other women have been through to try and guide what policy changes should be made in the future. And they are working on a maternity review, which is due to come out in December.
And what you're telling me is that you've got influence on this new review.
Very excitingly, and feeling, in a huge position of privilege, I got to be a spokesperson for a lot of women that I communicate with on a daily basis via platforms like Instagram and other social media platforms, and to basically speak on behalf of them about the things that we think need to happen.
All right, so you're in the room with 20 people, mixed bag, different parties, but there for the collective reason to explore birth trauma with the view of, at the end of the year, put something better and more safer and secure for women so you don't go through similar experiences?
Yeah, so obviously for me, this is something that I'm hugely passionate about. And when I brought out the book last year, I wrote about my experience, and it attracted a lot of media attention. And I did a lot of public speaking about it. And I connected with an awful lot of women who had been through something similar. And I got really into it. I don't know whether you remember, around May, June, July, summer of last year. And I tried to be a bit of a spokesperson in this area to speak up for all of the women that have suffered. And then, to be honest, I've slightly removed myself from that space for a period of time because I've had to focus on rebuilding my career and our relationship and, focus on our family. And it was interesting because this has completely set me on fire again. I have a fire in my belly to get going with this project. So last year, a lady called Theo Clark, who's an MP who I've met several times before, who happened to go to the same prep school as me and same secondary school. She launched this big birth inquiry that just so happened to coincide with the launch of my book. So it got published the same month that my book launched. She had been through a horrendous birth trauma herself, and she spoke publicly about it in the House of Commons to try
in the House of Commons
to try and get things moving and to try and get the conversation started, because there are a lot of people that for a very long time, it hasn't been spoken about enough.
So was this lady here when you went there yesterday?
She was there yesterday. Yeah. I'm actually doing her podcast next week. So we're going to chat about all things birth trauma.
And what's her podcast called?
Her podcast is called Breaking the Taboo. And actually her book launches this week and I've got a copy of it. So I'm going to give it a bit of a read. For me, yesterday felt like a really important step to get back into this space. It's really funny, politics sits over here and the world just sits down here. And it's similar to the medical space, which also people that work in it or in hospitals, they sit up here, we sit down here, and there's a bit of a barrier. You don't know how to cross that barrier. I've found that I've struggled to cross that barrier. I've spoken to you many times before. It's very hard to get in contact with the consultants that are behind my care.
Yeah.
You don't have them on speed dial. In a similar way, I know what I would like actioned when it comes to change in the maternity space, but I've not always known who the right people are to get those changes in motion.
Yeah.
I've worked with the Birth Trauma Association charity, and I speak openly about what I've been through. And I think that helps women that have already suffered, because they feel less alone and they can see me as a hopeful emblem of, they can follow my journey knowing, oh, well, she was awful and practically vegetated. And 3 years later, she's in a position where she can live her life and live a fulfilling life. So I feel like I'm kind of serving my purpose there, but I feel like there's so much more that I want to offer. And now I have contact details. And that was why yesterday was really important for me, because I got an opportunity to share my story in a lot of detail with a few people that are very important, that are basically going to be critical in the decision-making process.
Yeah.
And they hold quite a few of these APPG meetings to discuss maternity care, because it is such a big problem in this country. I think the government spend around £150 billion each year on the NHS. A very small portion of that is actually spent on maternity care, and that's where a big part of this problem stems from. I've had many conversations with maternity nurses, and they're not happy. They're leaving very quickly because they're not being paid properly and they're not being treated properly. I've spoken to student nurses at the hospital where I've had many surgeries I've had to spend a lot of time with, and people have said to me that none of their colleagues, their student friends, want to work in the maternity space. They don't even want to trial it. So they tend to spend time in different departments within the hospital because people that they know have been asked to empty out cupboards of dead bodies, of dead babies as students. Like, it is just not a place where people are wanting to work. And that is a major problem, and that needs to change. And I was also looking a little bit at the kind of medical negligence side of things, because that's a really good way of pinpointing whether a hospital is basically performing well or not. It's very hard for the government to actually get a lot of data from these individual hospitals because they all act as like individual trusts. So there's not one big marketplace where they can access everything. But they can look at the litigation cases that are going on and look at the quantity of them. And then they go, oh, there's a problem there, or there's a problem there. But often it takes for someone like me or people in a worse position than me who have had babies that have been killed to speak up and to actually whistleblow. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
To then actually form a case, like against a hospital. Like, it takes one person or a group of people to come together and go, okay, we need to actually start shouting about this. Anyway, in terms of medical negligence, between 2023 and 2024, the NHS have paid out close to 3 billion in medical negligence claims. And 41% of those were for maternity.
Oh my gosh.
Inadequate maternity care. That's nearly half of all cases. If you think about all the operations that are taking place, heart surgeries, hip replacements, someone having a fall and being picked up in the wrong way,
organ donors, transplants,
all of that, like cancer misdiagnosis, people not being listened to.
Jeez.
Nearly half of them are around the maternity sector.
That's alarming.
Isn't that seriously alarming? And these hospitals will just factor that into their finances. So each year they get a budget and they go, okay, sweet. Well, we know we're giving 10% to the insurance companies to pay out for these negligence claims. When instead, if we could be working on changing some policies, which mean that women are better educated and informed, so they know exactly what their options are when it comes to labor, they can choose and they can be listened to effectively. And they get the right care, you know, in the build up, in all of that antenatal care, and also in the hospital and then leaving the hospital, then that would save an awful lot of money.
As a woman who has nearly died giving birth and lived through 3 years of pain, when you found out that stat, how did it make you feel?
I had no idea how many people went through this kind of thing. And that's not me sitting here trying to fearmonger everybody that's pregnant at the moment, because it is something that's beautiful and natural and can be a beautiful, wonderful experience. And we have, you know, many friends who have had amazing birth experiences. But when I went through that first year postpartum, I felt like the only person in the world that went through that. I couldn't imagine anybody going through that.
But what you're telling me is that there's absolutely loads of people who are going through this.
Well, okay, so as an example, before I had this meeting yesterday, I panicked because I only was told about it 2 days before. I decided that I wanted to share an Instagram story telling people I was going to Parliament. And then I popped up a question box asking people, well, let me get it up. So I said, birth trauma sufferers, I need your help with something. I'm fortunate enough to be attending a roundtable in Parliament later today, which will contribute to the maternity report at the end of this year. I need to know what you think could or should have been done differently in the maternity care you received. So I did a little box, okay?
That's quite cool. So you've basically taken your microphone from the House of Commons and you've gone wallop to the nation.
But that's
have your say.
Because that's where my skill set lies.
It's great, isn't
that's what I can do. And I showed them this yesterday.
That's not your skill. That's just your
well, I have access to
what
that.
you're able to do. Yeah. But
As in, I'm not going to sit there and pretend that I'm a politician, but I want to be able to show them what I can offer. And so I did this story. You will never have seen anything like it in your life. Look at this scroll.
Oh, we'll get that on camera. Get that on that camera right there.
It never stops. This I've never had this ever on Instagram.
Holy
this is a list of people's
shit.
responses that never, ever stops. I can't get to the bottom of it. There's thousands, tens of thousands here.
I've never seen
tens
that
of
before.
thousands. It won't. I can never get to the bottom of all these responses. As in, there's thousands. I've already just non-stop scrolled.
Next time you go to the House of Commons or whatever room it is, room 13, show them that.
I showed them this, darling. It actually makes me
God.
feel quite emotional. There's
Well,
so many people out there that have been through this.
Right, so what you're telling me is that you're involved in a really, really massive problem that has touched a lot of people in this country.
So they're all people that want to feed back to make positive change.
Can you give me an example, please? Anonymous example.
There are lots of things. I mean, examples are of straightforward things that they could change would be giving mothers or parents access to the birth notes.
Birth plan.
Just know all of their birth notes when they leave hospital. So I learned yesterday that actually it's the obstetrician that owns the birth notes.
Eh?
So one of my good friends who I connected with, I say good friends, we weren't particularly good friends at Edinburgh, but we became good friends because she struggled really badly with postnatal depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her heart stopped in her surgery. So she nearly died. She couldn't get access to her birth notes. So she couldn't find peace or comfort in reading through what had happened to her. She had to get in touch with her local MP who had to demand that the notes were passed over to her. Everyone should just be given access to their notes so that they can comfortably read them in their own home, in their own time, and feel like at least they have some kind of control over what happened to them. I think everyone should be encouraged to download the apps. Patients Know Best in the NHS app before going in to give birth, so that at least when you have blood tests, you have scans, you'll get access to all of that.
That's great advice.
Online, and you don't have to beg for results. And look, I know that me saying that is going to cost the government a lot of money, because once people start taking agency over their own healthcare, they are going to be in a position to be requesting more and to, get more answers. That was a complete game changer for me with all of my subsequent surgeries. I had no idea what that was when I gave birth. It was only people like the doctor who was in the same high dependency unit when I was finally in a place when I was well enough to be in there, that there was a GP who was next to me who was asking for X-rays and special tests to be done because she knew what to ask for, and people had these apps.
You're involved in something huge here, right at the front of it.
It's so easy to try to put it to one side and just to focus on the things that are just sort of the day-to-day, all of the other bits and pieces that we get on with. But when I was there and I got into this, I felt so passionate about it.
Into what?
Well, into just talking about the problem that we have in this country.
Well, kudos to you, because what you just did then with the endless scrolling and your access to millions of people, I don't even know what the word is to describe that, but that's going to change the landscape of many people's lives.
One of the things that Rosie actually asked me, which was kind of towards the end, she said,
Rosie Duffield,
yeah. She said, do you feel like you have been scared to share what you've been through, or you're apprehensive about sharing what you've been through because you're worried it will have a knock-on effect with work and opportunity?
And your future care?
No, she didn't say that, but that was my answer. And I said to her, actually, no, at the beginning for that first year, I was in such a state of survival that I really didn't have the foresight to think that I would ever work again. I really didn't care about money. I just wanted to live, and I would share because actually selfishly it made me feel better sharing publicly and then being able to speak with other women that had been through something similar. And it was like a form of therapy for me. So I wasn't brave and valiant about it. I literally shared because I needed to be able to focus on something. And then actually I didn't think that it had impacted work too much, because people, I guess, appreciated the honesty. And also then I thought that people who employ us are normal people. So whether they're a PR at a company or a CEO of a company or the person in charge of making financial decisions, you'd hope that they're all normal people at the end of the day, and they'll all have dealt with some version of trauma, whatever that looks like. And whether they're a man whose wife might have had a tricky birth or postnatal depression or whatever it might be, or a woman that has directly suffered with that themselves. These are people that have compassion. So I don't think it should affect the work that we do.
No, I agree.
But what I did say that I was very scared to vocalize what I'd been through, because I didn't want people in the hospital to treat me differently, because I was very scared that I felt like it wasn't the end of the road for me in terms of having more surgeries. And I kind of knew, like, instinctively that I'd be back in there with more problems, because I didn't feel like I was fixed. Like, I knew that there were things going on inside me. And I was so petrified that if I spoke publicly in a way that was remotely damning, that I wouldn't get treated then fairly, because people would form a bias around me and they'd go, oh, I don't want to touch her. And this is quite interesting, actually. So I've had a few medical appointments recently. I had one fertility one. I actually had a breast screening a couple of weeks ago. In both of those appointments, the consultants asked me what my job was. And I now don't know. I found myself in a position where I don't know what to say. Because if I say author, they're going to be really interested. If I say, oh, I just own a few companies, I sound dismissive. So it feels like a weird question for me to answer at the moment, and for a weird reason, because if I'm truly authentic and I say what I do, I'm worried that they're going to treat me differently. And so in both of those appointments, I've gone, oh, I do like a couple of different things. But they've really wanted to know. And I don't know whether it's because they know who I am and they want me to tell them what I do, but they've not let it go. Like, they've been like, oh, no, like, what do you do? And then I've, say, gone away to have like a scan or another part of the appointment, and I've come back and they've asked again about what I do. And so in the fertility appointment, I ended up crying at the end of this appointment. This guy was lovely. And I said, look, in all honesty, I don't feel like I can tell you what I do or who I am, because I've got a public profile and I went through some awful medical stuff and I wrote a book about it. And I'm really worried that people like you are going to sit across from me and judge me and not want to treat me and try to pass me on to somebody else, because you don't want to get caught up in the mess.
That's brave. Did you say that to him, yeah?
Yeah. And the guy
probably responded very well.
Responded very well.
That is a great example of vulnerability and what people do.
He shook my hand and brought me in for a hug.
There you go.
And then started telling me lots about his life.
Good for you. That's a big moment.
But it was hard to do that.
100%.
And I do. That's the one thing that I do worry about when it comes to opening up, because I love to talk about, obviously, all of the positive stuff that the NHS has afforded us. You know, living in this country and living close to a brilliant hospital for the most part, but equally, like, then where do I sit?
That's a really beautiful example, by the way, of being backed in a corner, feeling uneasy.
Yeah. And
you decided to be really vulnerable with your truth, and you saw a really positive reaction as a result. But that is like, it's all good and well about, you know, people talking about, oh, be vulnerable, and it, you know, that's like such a big moment in your life where you displayed being vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, it's not easy. And then I think, you know, Sam's response was different, because he's got a different perspective on the whole thing, and his response was really that it's not his place to tell our story. So he gets asked about it all the time, but he's very sensitive when it comes to talking about what we've been through. But I think that they can recognize that he's also got this huge, like, mouthpiece that you can plop in and you know, turn up the volume and reach a lot of people, and like the impact can really be phenomenal. So that's important.
So he might go on the journey more with you. Is that what?
I don't think necessarily. I think it was just good to get like our foot in the door, and then to come away with email addresses for the relevant people. So there was another lady there who heads up like all of the maternity APPG meetings, who is an MP, who incidentally had gone through her own birth trauma 5 years ago. So she's hugely passionate about it now. So you just really need to find, and we're very lucky that then there are people that have have experienced it, who work in that environment, who can then try and keep things moving along.
Do you feel, I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about this scrolling of millions of people.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that? As in, like, is it just a demonstration of like the amount of people that you have access to? Or I'm sort of sitting here thinking, I know you write a column for a certain title, and I'm like, why don't you bring these stories to life and let that be your way of helping and bringing this to the surface more?
So there are quite a lot of things that I want to do with that. One of them is when I was then traveling there, reading through all of them, I thought I'm going to start doing a lot of research by creating forms and getting people to fill out these forms so that I can have a lot of data that can be passed on. And I thought that's something that I've wanted to do anyway when it comes to my health, because obviously there's a lot of research going into inflammatory bowel diseases at the moment, but I can access a lot of people that have an inflammatory bowel disease. Right. And I'm connecting dots around inflammatory bowel disease and fertility and hormones and bleeding and flares and that sort of thing. So I'm in a position where I'm trying to do a bit of research around that. But also now that I have their email address, I'm going to communicate with the charities that I work with, the people in Parliament and my audience to try and get some really powerful statistics to then send across to the powers that be. And then hopefully I can have a conversation with Wes, who's the health minister, and try and...
That should be easy enough.
...put forward a case for the proposed changes, of which I've made a list, extracting many ideas from the people that have written into me. Lots of people have said the care in the Netherlands is very good. I think we definitely can learn a lot from what other countries are doing well. You know, in Scotland, they have a different system where, as an example, they give like a baby bundle to parents that have had a baby, which kind of sets them up in that initial first week, especially for the underprivileged. You can't really afford lots of things like milk and nappies.
Well, they give them that, is that free?
Yeah, for free. There are lots of things that different cultures do, and I think that's actually something that Theo is working on, is kind of creating this maternity alliance where they pull out different people from different countries and they get together and have conversations about what's working and what's not working.
This is fascinating.
But these are things that are still new, and you'd think that this sort of stuff existed, but we have to remember that there haven't been like an awful lot of women in positions of power up until fairly recently. So if we look back to when Parliament was only blokes, like it wasn't really going to be a huge priority for them to talk about birth trauma, even though, you know, they would have to deal with the consequences at home when they're living in a toxic environment, when their wife is severely unwell, or, you know, which is then having the knock-on effect to a child as well, because that's a big part of it too, is the impact that it has on our children, which is then the next generation, and the cost that will incur if kids are brought up in broken homes where parents can't handle the trauma, they break up, or a parent, God forbid, kills themselves, or the environment is so toxic that they're then enduring the pain of the challenges, the fighting and everything at home. Like it can be really, really dark. And I think if there's anyone out there that's listening that is going through this, just know that you're not alone. But it can feel
like you are.
Like the world has been ripped away from you. I think that's what people also struggle to understand, because unless you've been through something like this, it's very difficult to connect with somebody's emotions. Like, you know, when you just, people might just be sat at home listening to this thinking this whole thing is crazy. Because they would be thinking, oh, but Louise and Ryan have such a fantastic life. Like, how can it have really been that hard? But it can feel really bad, because it's not easy going through something, especially as a first-time parent where you've never had an experience of giving birth before, just very little education, going into that hospital medical environment, potentially having to overcome a surgery to heal from that, to process that, but then also to be thrown into looking after somebody that you've never met before. It's not always as easy as people make it out to be, especially on social media. And I guess the proof is here when I literally have people that are, I mean, some of these people are I had like hugely influential people reach out to me after my book came out, like people with like millions and millions and millions of followers saying that they'd had experiences.
But these people haven't said anything publicly, but you have.
Oh, so why is that then?
No, but this emphasizes the position that you're now in. Because you've had the bravery to do it, you've now been catapulted right to the front of the conversation in Parliament.
But is that because my brain just went so
well, no, because you have
doolally afterwards?
No, because you
that
have
it took me to the most bottom.
No, because
place.
Well, yes,
that
that's
I've
part
lost
of it.
like all fear in speaking up about it now.
Well, that might be part of it, yeah. But you have an innate desire to help people, and you want to protect other women and steer clear from what you've experienced. So you have taken that and you've told your story publicly, and now people are looking to you clearly to almost, I want to say fly the flag, but that sounds a little bit.
So I just need to keep people in the loop then with
Well,
these
let me ask you
conversations.
this. Well, no, but this is going to be my next question. Like, I think this conversation is absolutely fascinating and monumental. How can I help you on this journey?
I think it's condensing the list of things that we would like to see changed. If I could run through like my really quick notes that I made when I was in a rush, like trying to get there.
You don't have to do that.
But I think that, as an example, I believe that there should be consultant-led care for all first births. So that means you have access to a consultant if you need to speak to them. That shouldn't be reserved for the privileged who can afford it, but it also shouldn't be reserved for people that are either considered old, so like the over 40, or people in high-risk groups. It should be available for people that need to speak to somebody who isn't a midwife if they need more. I believe that a post-birth debrief should always be offered, and often people won't take it, hopefully if they don't need it. I've mentioned about the transfer of medical notes. I think that there should be more mother and baby units to look after extremely vulnerable people who are suffering with really poor mental health. And Theo and I are going to go and visit some mother and baby units around the country. I think there's still only 3 in London. There's actually 1 in her constituency, which is quite rare because there aren't a huge amount.
When's that happening?
Well, we're speaking next Thursday, so we're then going to make an onward plan.
This is bloody great. I want to follow this journey, and I guarantee you people who listen to this will want to as well.
I think people need to know about what their rights are. I think the big part of it, what they said that they were working on at the moment, is giving at this 36-week mark, giving women like a really kind of like educational, having a proper conversation with them, where they explain what forceps are, an episiotomy is, a perineal tear is, what the stats are of people having a C-section versus an emergency C-section versus a natural birth versus an at-home birth, what the likely outcomes of those are based on up-to-date data, not outdated guidance, which is the current case. Also, lots of trusts have different policies, and I think there needs to be more of a universal like umbrella of care that everyone has access to. Like, I know some people who got to go and have like swan around birth suites and stuff to go and have a look before.
Can I say something?
I mean, I just would have wanted basic care, would have been nice. I also think that they can't have skeleton staffing on the weekend. It's not fair. Actually, do you know what? 4 of the women in that room gave birth on a Sunday. Surprise. They'd all had medical trauma. Is that surprising? Because they're understaffed, hospitals on weekends. People giving birth on a weekend deserve the same amount of care as someone giving birth on a Monday, Wednesday, or a Friday.
Yeah, that's wild.
Actually, so that's one of the things that then I will do when it comes to my research with the form. If you experience a traumatic birth, yes, what day of the week did you give birth on? If it was a Saturday or a Sunday, problem. You know that they have quotas. So they have quotas on when.
Deep.
No, wait. Okay, and then I'll shut up. They have quotas on what percentage of births they can allocate C-sections for. So a C-section on average costs around £3,000, and a natural birth costs around £700, like unassisted.
That's very interesting.
There's a bit of let's encourage parents to go down the natural route.
That's very interesting information.
But then, if you have an emergency C-section, more expensive, and then think of the aftermath of that, with all of the therapy that people need, the extra support they need, the extra days they need to spend in hospital, the extra scans they need, which are all very expensive, the radiologists to report on those scans, the blood transfusions, all of that is hugely costly. And one of the parents who lost their child up in, where was it? Not Northampton, no, somewhere where there was one of the big scandals. they wanted to have a planned C-section. They couldn't have one. And the guy literally was like, hang on a minute. So if we'd given birth in April versus whenever they gave birth, like later in, well, I don't know, it might even be like the tax year, their child might not have died. There shouldn't be that lottery.
You've got, as I say, a big opportunity. But I think it's really important to say at this point, because when we started this podcast, we were at a time in our life where we saw a good reason to share our story. We thought that we might be able to reach a lot of people and help them. And we've been going for 8 months or so, 40 odd episodes. And by having this conversation, I feel quite overwhelmed by it, because we've started with something that doesn't feel that long ago in reality. I can remember the first episode we shot in the kitchen, and we've moved into here since. And along this journey, but you have told your story, and we've shared bits along the way. And meanwhile, you're now having conversations in Parliament, and you're part of a whole change of legislation around birthing and deliveries and birth trauma and the care for women and maternity. And I think this is one of those moments where you need to hit pause and be like, this is huge. Brackets we. I think that we need to prioritize this on the podcast and follow what you do next, because you're leading a charge in a very big topic for the country.
It is big, isn't it? If you look at I know we've got a low birth rate or whatever at the moment, but fairly even split of men and women, and lots of women will have children inevitably. So
well done, basically, is what I'm saying. Well done, because we've started off in our kitchen.
Yeah,
we've had conversations where we've connected through something that we've struggled with. We've realised that it's resonated with people up and down the country and abroad. You've got yourself into the room with some very senior politicians. You're now part of something that's going to implement change and protect people. So you've done an amazing job. So we need to follow that now. And when people email and send you messages like that, what an unbelievable show of leadership. But all the people are just looking up to you.
But it's funny because part of me still just feels like a little child.
Right. Well, no, yeah, I get that, but I guess that's why I'm doing this whole spiel right now so you acknowledge what's happening. I do feel very proud. Because it's important to not just breeze past this and be like, oh yeah, I just skipped my way through Houses of Commons yesterday with my brother. No. This is huge. This is really huge.
I think given the kind of quite heavy nature of this episode, it would feel weird to move on to a listener submission to answer.
I think maybe change heavy to poignant. It's not heavy. I think this is amazing stuff.
Powerful then.
Powerful.
I would like to read out some of the suggestions from somebody that wrote to me, because they've taken quite a lot of time to write, to really think about it, and to write something that actually looks really sensible.
Great
and
idea.
I'd like to get your opinion on this as well, Ryan. Hi, Louise. I hope you're really well. I'm sadly in the club of traumatic births. Here is my list of things that the NHS could do to improve. I'm sure you will be flooded, which must make for difficult reading. Oh, why is it? It is quite
Would you
emotional.
like me to read it?
Thank you.
So, first of all, she says, thanks so much for working to change the system. It's going to have a deeply profound impact on so many women. Again, important to acknowledge that. Inadequate medical feedback. Had a major hemorrhage from forceps and was not actually told I had hemorrhaged. Therefore, didn't take care of myself in the way I should have. She was told by a midwife that there was a vaginal infection on day 5 and to get it checked at day 10. She went to A&E on day 9 and was treated for 5 days with an operation as all my stitches had become undone and infected. Mental preparation. There should be mental preparation for birth where they explain the common mental states that you will go through. That includes all emotions with a realistic picture of how little time you have with yourself. Preparation for actually taking care of the baby. There's no actual class to teach you how to burp. This is actually so true. There is no class to teach you how to burp, feed, sterilize, swaddle, and settle a baby.
Isn't that crazy? That you never actually get told how to do any of that?
Mate, sorry, I shouldn't say mate. You were so unwell. They wheeled that baby in, our baby, after however many hours. I had to go straight into all of those things, by the way. Burping, feeding, swaddling, settling, sterilizing. No one showed me what to do.
Yeah,
I'd never even changed a nappy.
Literally, we press a call button, no one would come for half an hour. We could have all imploded, killed each other, and no one would have even known.
Also needs to be education on what silent reflux is and what reflux is like. Good point, because Leo had reflux and I didn't know what the hell was going on.
Should we write a manual, Ryan?
Too much focus on the merits of breastfeeding. They put so much pressure on you to breastfeed in the first couple of days. They obviously blasted past their medical knowledge and understanding of what the contractions or the process of breastfeeding can cause contractions in the uterus, which for you was the absolute worst and last thing that you should have been doing. And yet they continually put pressure on you doing it. So yes, too much focus on the merits of breastfeeding. That's completely true. Hospital conditions on the ward, much too hot. Oh my God. Well,
there was someone that was a woman who was in that same hospital as us that ended up in intensive care following a birth, and no one in intensive care was educated on how to look after a baby.
By the way,
in the hospital, so they didn't even have access to milk. Well, the woman's in a coma, so obviously she can't breastfeed, and no one could get access to milk in the hospital. So they had to go out across the road to a Boots to buy formula to take up.
Is this? Yeah. By the way, I'm going to skip through because there's so much, but this is unbelievably accurate to our story.
Well, yeah, because everyone's saying the same thing, because it's not actually rocket science.
No, it's not rocket science, but I haven't seen this before.
Yeah.
And I'm not privy to these messages.
Okay.
Discharged too early.
Yeah.
Too few facilities and resources, what you were just saying about milk and whatever else. Hesitation for C-sections. Partner or helper shouldn't be told to leave. I couldn't get back into the ward every time I left. I had to go through the same vetting process. Who are you here for? How long are you going to be? I haven't left. I've been here for 7 days.
You had to sleep on the floor.
Mate, it's unbelievable. They make it almost impossible. This is amazing. Mate, I'm in. Tell me how you want me to help and I'm in.
We should just create a bit of a kind of document with the things that we want to achieve and then the things that everyone that we're in comms with wants to achieve. So everybody out there. And then find the best way to achieve those things. But make them feel like easy changes, inexpensive changes.
Well, I'm just going to finish on this because we've got a very close mate who's just had a baby. And even through awareness of our story, he's managed to steer clear of almost all issues.
Yeah.
And he's had a great birth and they're at home, they're happy, they're healthy, and everyone's great.
And Ryan's a godfather.
Which is wonderful. So
it's an important thing to also look at.
By even just having a conversation and creating a level of awareness so people know what to look out for. This is obviously quite deep, talking about writing a manuscript and going in heavy with stuff like that. But having a child is beautiful. Be aware of some of the things that we got tripped up with. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. One of the really common messages from people was that they just didn't feel like they were listened to when instinctively they knew what was going on in their body. And I think that that's one of the most important things, is to trust your gut, trust your instincts. And if you think that something isn't right, then please speak up about it. Because it's actually very hard for someone to be able to feel the amount of pain that's going on inside your body just from looking at you. So push.
Look forward to following the journey that you're about to go on. Sounds really amazing. And if you've enjoyed listening, leave comments. Maybe this will be an avenue or a platform where people will get into the conversation themselves.
Yeah. I feel good about this.
Great. Well, there you go.
I feel really proud about yesterday. I slept really well. Well, actually, I was so exhausted after the whole thing because it is fairly triggering. I passed out in Leo's bed at 8 when I put him down, and I stayed there all night.
It's true. Yes, it's true.
You got the bed to yourself.
But that's a sign that you're on the right track, because you're doing things that fulfill and enrich and give you purpose. So
thank you.
I think it's great. So we'll see you again on Monday with an AUA, which I've no doubt will be snappier, lighter, kind of conversations. But thank you for listening.
Watch this space.